What is it? More flowers? Really, what a bore. Just please put them down. Anywhere. And then please go.
Mrs. Bennett, Vanessa, it's Erica Kane. We met last night at the benefit.
Oh, Erica, forgive the mistaken identity. So sorry. Oh, the nurses, they've been coming and going in and out of here at a maddening pace all morning long.
I see. All right, well, I'll just, I'll put these over here. My goodness. So many well-wishers. You have enough flowers to open a flower shop.
Oh, how quaint. Me as Eliza Doolittle.
Well, actually, I thought you might miss this. I found this last night after the ambulance.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. My whole world's inside this evening bag. Eric, oh, look, my phone. Connection with the outside world. Oh, dear, dear, dear. Oh, you are a godsend, really. Oh, makeup, makeup. Thank you. I must look like an absolute witch, right?
No, of course not.
Oh, well, not quite so bad, if I do say so myself.
Oh, absolutely not.
Oh,
Not
dear.
after what you've been through. My goodness. With your heart and everything, I have to tell you, I was panic-stricken.
Oh, much ado about nothing, really. I have you to be grateful for getting me such prompt help, though.
Well, what did the doctor say?
Well, doctors, you know how they do love to play God.
Was it a heart attack?
Well, the big they, whoever they are still running some tests. Though, my diagnosis is simple acute indigestion brought on by inedible food. I don't mean to offend your favorite charity. We know how these things go, though, don't we, dear? But a little old gastric bubble is a small price to pay for a worthy cause.
Well, I'm just very glad you're feeling better. I'm sure after what you went through last night is mostly a blur.
No, not at all. I mean, my heart may have skipped a beat, but my memory's perfectly fine.
Oh, well, good. Then you remember that there was another doctor on the scene before Dr. Martin arrived. Dr. Hayward, Dr. David Hayward.
How could I forget?
Dr. Hayward is a renowned cardiologist. When you collapsed, I just expected him to help you. I was stunned when he walked away.
Well, thank heavens Dr. Martin came to my rescue, right?
Yes, but that certainly doesn't excuse Dr. Hayward's behavior. I mean, I just don't know what he was thinking. How could he possibly refuse to treat you when you clearly needed on-the-spot
Fear of
medical
malpractice suits? I don't know.
Well, the oddest thing. After the ambulance took you away, he came back. And I got the distinct impression that he knows you or knows
I would
of
really
you.
prefer not to discuss Dr. David Hayward's medical ethics, or lack thereof. You know, if you don't mind, let's just drop the subject and concentrate on your charity work.
I beg your pardon?
You're tiring the patient, Miss Kane. I'm gonna have to ask you to leave.
Thanks for the balloons, my dear. And, for returning my evening bag.
Well, you're welcome. I'd be very happy to come back later.
No, that won't be necessary, really.
Well, I certainly know how dreary a hospital stay can be. I'd be glad to bring you some of your favorite magazines, books.
All I require is peace and quiet, and starting now.
Take good care of her.
Well, doctor, what's the prognosis? Will I live?
Apparently. What are you doing in Pine Valley?
I closed my eyes, looked into a map, and pointed my finger, and in the winter came out Pine Valley.
You never leave anything to chance.
Perhaps I'm just passing through. Or perhaps I stopped to pick up a few Quaker little knickknacks on the cheap, or perhaps I'm thinking of making Pine Valley my home. Or maybe, just maybe, I wanted to see you again.
Or maybe none of the above.
I understand you've done quite well for yourself. How does Miss Kane put it? A renowned cardiologist, don't you? I even heard the nurses talking about a new cardiac wing.
In the world of cardiac surgery, I am considered a superstar.
Superstar. superstars burn out.
Your concern is touching.
Well, you may be at the top of your profession, but I hardly consider you an unqualified success.
I performed quadruple bypass surgery on the governor of this state. I saved his life. How do you define success?
Well, now that depends. Was he a Republican or Democrat?
The sense of humor is new. Where'd you pick it up?
I also noticed last night you were dateless at the charity event. You're never married.
I haven't had the misfortune.
Single men are always suspect, you know. Someone like you needs a brilliant wife who can reflect their glory. It's such a pity you haven't fared as well in your personal life.
Now you're the expert on that.
Looks like his BP responded to the dietary changes. You want to sign off on his release?
Nope, he's your patient, my friend. Honor belongs to you.
Joe, am I interrupting?
No, Erica.
I just came from Vanessa Bennett's room. I returned her evening bag.
Dad says you were a key player in saving her life last night.
Well, all I did was scream for help.
I was lucky I was nearby.
Joe, this whole thing was so unnerving. I mean, there we were just making small talk in the parking lot, and all of a sudden, this woman collapsed at my feet.
Well, the main thing is you didn't panic.
Well, no, of course I wouldn't panic. But I have to tell you, it really did hit me when I went home. I didn't sleep a wink last night.
Well, I think you can relax now. She's going to be all right. I expect Mrs. Bennett to make a complete recovery.
Well, that much is a relief.
Is she a friend of yours?
I just met her last night after the fundraiser. But, Joe, there is something else that I cannot get out of my mind. Is there a Good Samaritan law in the state?
Why do you ask that?
Last night, when Vanessa Bennett collapsed, if another doctor had been on the scene and he refused to help, could it be because he was afraid of a malpractice lawsuit?
Any doctor is duty-bound to help in an emergency.
Why? Was there somebody else on the scene besides Dad?
Yes, there was. And he's on the staff here, which is why I thought you should be alerted.
Who was it?
David Hayward.
Hayward. You sure of this?
Well, of course I am, Joe. He was standing as close as you are to me now. And I begged him to help the poor woman who was collapsed, and he answered by walking away.
Hayward, this doesn't make sense. I mean, he thinks he's God's gift of medicine. It doesn't make sense that he'd walk away from a chance to play hero, you know what I mean?
Well, I thought it was very strange. And I also got the feeling, and this was also strange, that he and Mrs. Bennett know each other.
Well, I'll get to the bottom of this. Joni, page Dr. Hayward. I want him in my office, stat.
Do you have any idea what the possible connection between Hayward and Mrs. Bennett might be?
I asked him last night, and he very artfully dodged my questions. And Mrs. Bennett is not much more forthcoming. It's...
Miss Kane? We'll meet again.
Dr. Hayward, Miss Kane has just told me something I find very disturbing.
I'll bet she has. I assume we're talking about what took place after the benefit last night?
Indeed. Mrs. Bennett was clearly in distress. You were on the scene, and you failed to treat her.
Failure hardly enters into it. I was standing nearby and would have helped Miss Bennett when my pager went off. And by then, you were on the scene, Joe, and assuming that the woman was in good hands, I answered my page. There was a patient in post-op fibrillating.
I didn't hear your pager.
It's the kind that vibrates. I've always had a pet peeve against pagers going off in restaurants and movie theaters.
But you came back to the parking lot after the ambulance left.
I gave my orders over the phone, and the patient stabilized.
You abandoned someone clearly in distress in order to respond to a page.
I was confident that the poor woman was in good hands with you on the scene, Joe. That's why I responded to what I thought was another emergency. By the time I came back to see if you needed my help, the woman was en route to the hospital. What's this all about, Joe? Did Miss Bennett file a complaint?
No, but I intend to talk to her. And if I find any evidence of malfeasance, you can forget about heading up the new cardiac wing. Actually, you can forget about this hospital altogether.
Ah, there goes my page. Duty calls. Miss Kane, always a pleasure.
Every word out of that man's mouth was a lie. Did not go off, I would swear to that.
You don't have to sell me on it.
So, well, what are you going to do, Joe?
Unfortunately, there's very little I can do without proof.
But you have me. I'm an eyewitness.
I know, but legally it's going to be your word against his. And unfortunately, he's got the full support of the board, thanks to Palmer Cortland. So I'm afraid that what you brought me is not enough for me to get rid of Haywood, much as I would like to.
Joe, this is just not right. I mean, people's lives revolve around this hospital. My mother worked here until the day she died, and Dr. Tyler, my stepfather, he was here for the groundbreaking of Pine Valley Hospital when Pine Valley Hospital was just a blueprint and a dream. I mean, at the very least, Joe, this seems really a corruption of their legacy.
You should run for the hospital board, who definitely could use her support.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, well, I just might do that.
Yeah, I wish she was on the board when Hayward pulled that stunt on Chandler.
What stunt on Chandler?
Well, I don't... Is this up for review?
Well, I don't think any of us was sworn to secrecy.
Well, then what happened?
Dr. Despicable himself intentionally mismedicated Adam Chandler when he was here a while back. Shot his blood pressure right through the roof.
Adam nearly died, and then Haywood blamed it all on Jake.
This is horrible. And that man is still practicing medicine?
Well, money talks.
You know, David Hayward asked me something last night that I found fascinating. Actually, it made my blood run cold. He looked me in the eye and he asked me if there wasn't someone in my life who I would refuse to lift a finger to help, even if that person's life were in jeopardy. Under the circumstances, I found that question to be extremely ghoulish.
You think he was referring to himself and Mrs. Bennett?
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind about that.
I think it's time I had a talk with the lady. Oh, Erica, I want to thank you very much for bringing this to my attention.
You're welcome, Joe. And Joe, good luck with Mrs. Bennett. Because she's got her guard up, too, and what she's guarding is anyone's guess.
Some rather disturbing news about something that happened last night after you collapsed.
Oh, no, my check bounced. I'll have to beat up my accountant again.
This concerns you and Dr. David Hayward. You were in distress, and Dr. Hayward neglected to treat you.
Oh, you've been listening to the ravings of that very protective Erica Kane, haven't you?
She did express her concerns.
Well, I think Miss Kane should confine her extracurricular activities to her brilliant fundraising. There was no trouble between Dr. Hayward and myself last night. None at all.
No, thank you. I have my own hair and makeup people. Who is conducting this interview? Really? Well, and the intro to the program?